is the Hamilton County Solid Waste Policy Committee meeting, January 19, 2022. It's 1:30. Here we are. I do want to do the round robin for folks so they know who is sitting at the table here. So I'm going to start with you, Greg.
Sure. Greg Kesterman, Health Commissioner for Hamilton County.
I'm County Commissioner Denise Driehaus.
I'm Tony DiFuccio. I represent the waste generators on the policy committee, 440 policy.
Well, that was me. We'll go to you.
Bob Getter, the public representative on the policy committee.
Karen Hurley, the general interest representative.
And I'm Chris Bruner, the student representative.
Yes, very nice. And
Schumacher.
Yes, thank you.
I'm the clerk.
And Michelle, manager of solid waste.
All right, our first order of business is to approve of the minutes. We've got a couple different sets of minutes here. So some of that you were on the subcommittee and some of us were not.
Right.
And so I'm going to ask you all to make a motion related to your own minutes, because I wasn't there. So I don't feel comfortable doing that. And so that is the first set of minutes, the November 10th and December 2nd, 2021 Rules Subcommittee minutes. And I will entertain a motion to approve of those minutes.
And I'll second on November 10th, Rules Subcommittee and the December 2nd.
Okay, will you
We want to do them both at the same time?
Yeah, can you just make that motion?
I'll make that motion, November 10th and December 2nd.
Thank you.
And since Sue's not here, that leaves it to Tony.
Yes, I'll second.
Second to approve of the minutes, all right?
So those are both subcommittee.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
No worries. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then we'll move on to the meetings of this committee from November 17th and December 6th, 2021. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Thank you.
And I'll
Second.
Karen.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, very
And I would like to thank Susan
Yes.
for the minutes.
Yes.
That was quite a bit of detailing work.
Oh, Lord.
That's all I did for a while.
Yeah.
I had that in my notes too, to thank Susan.
Yeah.
My staff was printing, they're like, oh my Lord, and I said, oh my goodness, look at all the minutes we have.
was the record, but I've only done in 30 years.
I was thinking it was a lot of work for me to read them. That had to be a lot of work to write them.
It was. I thank you so much for acknowledging that.
Absolutely. Well, and and Todd used to be the chair, so it's confusing to me. Our minutes are longer now. But if he were here, he'd be making fun of me right now. So we'll leave that be. All right, the next thing we've got is public comment. I have one speaker's card. Tim Mara is here. I think we have some folks on Zoom too, but Tim, why don't we go with you first? You've got the pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
All right, my name is Tim Mara. Here is a member of the board of directors of Oxbow. First, just by coincidence, I wanted to thank Susan Schumacher as well as Michelle Bowles. They've both been very helpful in answering my questions and providing documents very promptly, so I appreciate them doing that. Now, with regard to item 5A on the agenda, next steps in administering the solid waste rules, I want to point out to you that Rumpke has 3 pending permit applications: renewal of the Title V air permit, the application to increase the average maximum daily deposit of waste of site by a factor of 15, and the new access road and related work. Although Rumpke's application to increase the amount of waste brought to the site is dated December 6th, my letter is dated December 17th, OEPA advised Rumpke that its application was deficient in several respects. Rumpke submitted a supplemental response set on December 21 with the information they requested. Therefore, December 21 should be regarded as the date of a complete submission by Rumpke, which date is after the county commissioner's adoption of rules on December 16th. For that reason, the tonnage request, the increase in tonnage, should be regarded as one which falls under the county's rules, and Rumpke should be notified to submit its application to the county for hearing and possible approval or rejection. Similarly, Rumpke's application dated December 16th for a new access road and related facilities comes should also be notified to submit an application under the rules for this body to consider for the county's commissioners' consideration. I also want to briefly address item 6B on your agenda. I understand that your consultant, Karen Lucan, will be making a presentation and giving an overview on the stakeholder input sessions, which I understand includes solid waste service providers, businesses, and local governments. I am disappointed to find that there are no stakeholder sessions for environmental groups and other nonprofits, service organizations, nor for citizens in general. I believe that that kind of input should occur concurrently with these other sessions that are going on. And furthermore, general citizen input should not be relegated to merely responding to a final draft on the eve of adoption of the plan.
Are there any public comments via Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. And Nifong, you didn't introduce yourself when we did our round robin.
Yvonne Chen, Hamilton.
And Matt Wallard is not here. He is the new member that's been appointed, or elected, I should say, by the Township Trustee Association. He has COVID, and so he is not with us, but he expects to join us at our next meeting. All right, Kurt Grossman on the line. I see you, Kurt.
Yes, thank you.
The floor for 3 minutes.
Great. Again, I'm Kurt Grossman. There's some errors in your minutes from November 17th that I put in the chat. I believe that that will be taken care of.
Hey, Kurt, can you get closer to your microphone?
Yes, can you hear me?
Go again.
I'm as close to my microphone as I can get.
There we
Can
go.
you hear
That's
me?
better.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. First, there are some errors in your November 17 minutes about me. I put them in the chat. Hopefully those will get corrected. I just have a couple quick comments. One is I'm concerned about this committee continuing with using the county prosecutor as your counsel, since the county prosecutor also recently took a position contrary to this committee. I would like to suggest that Mr. Bauer, who served to the subcommittee, be expanded in his duties to be the counsel to this policy committee. I think that would avoid some conflicts of interest. Also, in dealing with conflict of interest, the representative from the townships, the new representative, I understand has received funding from Rumpke, but also is representing a township that has a settlement agreement with Rumpke that puts him in a position where he cannot protest certain actions that this policy committee has to consider. And so I would like to suggest that there be legal counsel asked to check on whether there is a conflict of interest situation there in his serving in both capacities. The last thing to mention is when the new rules were established, I understand that they did not get formally published. For example, in the Inquirer or whatever other media they should be published in. I don't know if Ohio law requires that, but I would think as a safety measure, you'd want to do that. As a lawyer admitted in this state, I think I'm bound to say that. So that's the sum of my comments today. I can't be with you also because of health problems, and I can't stay on long because I have a meeting with Senator Brown coming up shortly. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Our next speaker is Sandy Stalen. Good afternoon. You are on mute.
Did I unmute? Can you hear me
There we
now?
go. Good.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Good afternoon. My name is, well, actually Sandra Stalen. I'm a Lawrenceburg Road resident. I live directly down the hill and downwind from the proposed Bond Road Rumpke Dump addition. I represent my neighbors on Lawrenceburg Road, and today I represent the Dump Fighters group. For decades, we've been told that solar alternate energies are not enough to power the country. Last year, solar, wind, and geothermal accounted for 20% of the country's residential electricity needs. Globally, it accounted for 30%. According to the EIA, the Government Energy Information Administration, cities, counties, corporations, and countries have finally come to their senses when it comes to the changes that need to be made for the near future. For decades, Hamilton County has been led by the nose by Rumpke, who has convinced everyone that their methods are the only way to dispose of solid waste. Their profits, not the health of residents, have been their driving force. Rumpke has played fast and loose with environmental laws and EPA variants and exemptions. It's really important. The rules that were passed in 2020 by the Hamilton County Commissioners, thank you, are a good start in reining in a company that seems to have no desire to change their ways. Our group, which is the core of the former Stop the Stink, Ditch the Dump, and Stop the Bond Road expansion groups, we will be at every monthly meeting and fighting hard at every turn to make sure that one way or the other, the new rules will be followed and there will not be any new landfills in Hamilton County. Let the surrounding states and counties deal with their own solid waste. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I see a hand raised.
Hello, Commissioner Dreehouse.
Yes, Marie. Marie, would you like to speak?
I just have a quick comment, and I raised my hand up with little things here, but I'd just like to reiterate what Mr. Mara said about public participation. I represent the League of Women Voters here today, and I think that we would be happy to participate in a stakeholder group about the Hamilton County Solid Waste Plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? All right, seeing none. Sorry, Carrie Davis has her hand up.
Can you hear me all right, folks?
Yeah.
Okay. First off, thank you, Commissioner Dreehouse, for all your work on the rules and leading this county into an entirely new direction that is going to have so many improvements here and outside our jurisdiction. I came into the meeting late. I was getting out of another meeting, and so I didn't get to benefit from hearing everybody else's. One of the things that stood out in the agenda, I did send everyone a copy of my public comments because I don't believe the public is being afforded anywhere near adequate time to comment or participate and contribute to the direction that the committee is going in and the county. And we need a better way. The most concerning line in the agenda was, how are we going to include the landfill operators, which I support completely. They have to be involved. But I was very concerned that the question was not also in there, and how are we going to include the nonprofits from the environmental area and from the community, the individuals in the community and nonprofits representing communities. And so I think it just shows that we are being disregarded in the process. I don't believe we have transparency going on. I don't even know if Sue Magnus is real, but he's bothering to get this information to the public. I do not know gosh. Ms. Bowles was
We are having a really hard
with
time
the shareholder. I don't think any of you even know what's going to the committee. I believe on the website. So, you hear me? Well, I don't know how to fix now.
Gary, you're cutting in and out, and we're having a really hard time hearing you. Although I did receive, and I'm sure everyone else did, your comments via email, and so I assume they are similar to what you're saying here, that we really can't hear you. So I apologize for that. I hope it's not on our end, but I will refer everyone to the written document that you sent via email. But thank you for your participation.
Ask the people that spoke to email or comments if they can.
Yeah, yes, and so the clerk has asked if you have a written document related to your comments or could summarize, she would greatly appreciate that. And if you can email them, that would be very helpful. Thank you. All right, that is for the public comment. And we are going to take some of these items up under the policy items, item number 5 on our agenda. But before we get to that, we've got item number 4, which is the resource revenue updates analysis, and that's Michelle.
Yes, so we are, if you look at the 2021, we've got almost all of the months in there except December. We're holding pretty steady from 2020. We have a slight increase, about 5% increase. Most of that is in out-of-district waste, but nothing hugely different from 2020.
All right, we'll move on to item number 5, which is, Bob?
My usual comment that, note that 57% of the revenue, of the waste is from out of district, out of state, and 43% from in county, and a lot of reliance on revenue from those waste streams. And so there seems to be an out of balance reliance of out of district waste streams. As we look at the plan and revise the plan, I think that's something to look at there.
Is there any other comments related to Michelle's report? Hearing none, we'll go to policy items. Mr. DiPuccio and I both wanted to talk about the role of the policy committee and the role that we are going to play moving forward related to the rules that were passed by the Board of County Commissioners. So, Tony, I will let you go first because you asked for this to be an agenda item, I think, before I did. So I think they're both related to one another. So why don't you go ahead and lead your part of the discussion related to what you want to discuss about the policy committee.
Yeah, I'll characterize it by saying this is actually a comment or item I had identified prior to the whole rules development, and that's that my observation is, and this is not the first time this has occurred with the policy committees, we seem to have drifted away from our primary goal and obligation, which is to set policy. We have crept steadily into more and more detail in terms of the detailed management of the solid waste district, and that is why we have a staff, and we also obviously access the Hamilton County Health Department as well. So I want us to give that some consideration. This previously around 2007 or 2008, we found ourselves, the policy committee at that time, found themselves in a very similar position, and they sat down. I think we had a strategy meeting, had brought in an outside facilitator to really think this through a lot more about what is our responsibility, what is our focus. We have a very capable staff both in the health department and in the solid waste department, and I think to let them do their job and not dive down into these. That's my overall kind of general thought on it. And if you want to use the example of the rules, I think that should have been something that at one point we should have stopped and said, okay, if the determination is made that we need rules, we should have given the solid waste manager and the Hamilton County Health Department the direction to develop those rules. They're the ones that, they're our staff, that's what they're supposed to do, and rather than us sitting there word by word, line item by line item. That's just one example. We have, the other side of that, we have done some of that with, for instance, the grant program. The policy committee doesn't approve every grant that comes through for a request. We turn that over to gotten out of it in terms of approving every single grant request that comes in, and it's said, look, staff has the guidelines, they know how to do it, and they provide that information back to us as information. So that was where I was coming from.
So is your, well, and I do think these two things fold together. because now we have rules that have been established, and we need to have a construct around those rules, through the solid waste district. So I think these two things do fold into one another when we're talking about what is the role of the policy committee and staff, both solid waste and public health, and the prosecutor's office, which is going to, and how do we make sure that we've got something that is responsive to what the rules dictate we do when an application is asked for some kind of expansion or whatever else is going on in the county, and how do we respond to that? And so I think we need to have that in place. Michelle and I have had a couple conversations about that, but Michelle, could you help us better understand your thinking related to that and the overall structure of the policy committee and how we operate currently?
Absolutely. So, I will say the main, at least in Ohio Revised Code, the main focus of the Solid Waste Policy Committee is the writing of the Solid Waste Plan, which really does govern the programs and everything. So what we're doing right now is developing the Solid Waste Plan is really important. So all of the analysis that I email you, please read them and give me feedback on. But I will say, as far as the rules are concerned, we have been looking into putting out a request for proposals or a request for information on consultants that would be able to help review that, because we do not have the ability on in-house to do that. So we are looking at that. I also appreciate Kurt mentioned the publishing of the rules. That is also something that we are looking into. It's not as cut and dry as you would think. We got a quote from the Inquirer for $7,000 to post it, so we are looking into alternatives. So we are working on that, and we'll get those published soon. So, but we are looking into how we would take the next step for when a proposal comes in.
So, and in your analysis, are you looking at other solid waste districts? I mean, what does that analysis entail?
You mean as far as the rules go?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I reached out to other, my counterparts in the other solid waste districts, to see if anybody had requests for proposals or how does that process work. I also reached out to Hamilton County engineers because they frequently, although they're not looking at solid waste plans, they do other similar type engineering work. So they gave us some guidance on the process for hiring an engineering type firm, which is a little bit different than just a regular consultant. So we've gotten their advice. And so really you put out a request for qualifications first, and they are going to send me a template of what they use so that we can plug in what we would need specifically for a firm that would be reviewing solid waste plans.
Okay. And I think we do have also a question on the table about whether or not some of the activity has kicked the rules in, or rather, the changes from OEPA. And I think we're probably going to need a legal opinion as to whether or not that's the case, in the midst of trying to figure out, how we are going to respond to that. If it's already happening, what does that look like? And if it is yet to happen, then what does that look like? So I will entertain, comments from the rest of the board related to these.
Just on the general comments about the role of the policy committee, the Ohio Revised Code defines the role of the policy committee, and it offers broad advice. It offers a broader point of setting policy and governance over the district. But it also specifically states that the policy committee does develop rules for the district. That's the role of the policy committee, to develop rules for the district. We looked that up when we were discussing that with the EPA during our subcommittee research. So the policy committee does not manage the staff of the district. That's not the role of the policy committee. But there is that broader role of the policy committee to provide policy and governance, and the rule governance is in there. But I do believe that we should not be micromanaging the staff. That's not the role of the policy committee. But being involved in the setting of the rules is most definitely part of the role of the policy committee. And then we set the process in place for the management of the rules with, you know, and that's what this discussion is about. How do those rules become implemented? I do believe that there are needs for further rules, and the further rules on composting anaerobic digesters, that was mentioned in the prior meeting. I believe that down the road there is needs for further rules for the district, and I don't think we should drop that. And I think that's the role of the policy committee, to listen to the public and to see what the needs are for the district and setting more rules for the district.
This is a question, given the points that Tim Mara raised about permits that are pending. I know it's been very quick that the rules have been in place. Do we know who's going to notify Rumpke about how these rules apply to their permitting process now and what they need to do about it? Tim said, you know, somebody needs to notify Rumpke that they need to follow these rules. Who will do that? I guess that's the question.
I think even before that, it's a legal question that the solid waste district needs to answer. Are the rules applicable?
That's right.
The public comments say, yes, they were, but really it's up to the attorney to determine if they're applicable. The other piece is you say Rumpke, but we have dozens of operators in Hamilton County that are impacted by these rules. Probably need to ask the bigger question, have the dozens of operators, including Rumpke, been notified of the rules?
Notifying them of the rules.
Because other operators might be making changes,
Right.
and this group might not be privy to those changes. They've never been notified, so
Okay.
probably we need to look bigger picture as opposed to one operator.
So Greg, given that, jumping ahead a little bit, if that were done, then who would notify Rumpke that they need to do these things? Or you're saying just notifying them of the rules would be enough to let them know they need to complete the additional kinds of paperwork?
Only my opinion, and really sensitive to both Bob and Tony's comments, I think really the solid waste district manager probably
Yeah.
knows
Okay.
that this is a weird period because
Yeah.
of
Okay.
the transition into rules. I think we as a committee could recommend that she seek legal opinion on those, and then
Okay.
moving forward, you know, if we notify all the operators, the district in theory will be notified.
Okay.
At least for the one change at Rumpke, my team shared an email with the solid waste district manager, making them aware that my office was privy to that permit application and to that deficiency notification. And I plan to continue, I think, for public health, to continue to make sure the solid waste district, in lieu of.
Okay, great, thank you, that was clarifying. I hadn't quite put that all together. Okay.
Karen, you're right. The way I would understand, we don't presently have an administrative structure set up to take care of these rules and regulations. And so we're starting from ground zero, and that's where we're going. Michelle has already talked about, Sharon's already recognized the outside assistance on that, so it's going to be first steps, but the whole internal process, notification is one, just one aspect of that, how to formulate procedure, process. I would leave that up to the solid waste district. Have to put that together. I think we've all recognized it.
So I have a question then to the group, because I'm the newest of the group. So in order to get a legal opinion related to the permits that are currently moving through the process, I don't know, do we need to formally have a motion to, or is that something that Michelle asks of the prosecutor's office, after, you know, he's given some direction related to that, or do we need something formal, a formal motion?
I yield to the needs of Michelle as she needs advice.
I can request a legal opinion without
Okay, so a legal opinion related to whether or not the rules
pending
would kick
application.
in, yeah, okay. All right, and then the other, issue that was raised was any kind of conflict of interest related to our newest,
That's right.
board member, Colerain Township Trustee Wallert. And so, I don't know if Mr. Wallert would be the most appropriate person to ask for that conflict of interest, or if, I mean, I'm a little doing it rather than him doing it.
I think
As health commissioner, my position, not me personally, has asked on behalf of a board member, so it might be appropriate for the solid waste district manager to
Okay.
ask, but
All right,
she could consult with the prosecutor.
okay, well, can you put that on the list as well? Just so we're all in good stead here. Okay, and then we've got this, so we've got the legal opinions that we need, but then we've got this much broader question about how we're gonna set up, relative to the rules. So Michelle, you're working on that. I can see that our next meeting is in March. And you're, already thinking through some legal expertise and outside counsel for that. Could you have something in front of us by March that kind of, yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Very good. So you're shaking your head with me.
One more question, Michelle, do you need any budget revisions to help, provide funding for some of the
We
new?
probably will, but I won't know what those revisions will be until we get the proposal. So we'll have to
Perfect.
look at
Makes
that, but
sense.
yes, we will.
And that is an excellent question, because when the policy committee increases the workload, like the rules that were adopted, a budget amendment is a natural question right
Yep.
there. Yeah.
Michelle, can we amend our budget without having to get the approval on the plan?
Is there a level, a degree to which we do that?
If we dramatically change the programs we have set out that we are going to do in the plan, then we might have to. We are living up to our obligation of the programs that are in the plan, so this.
Not so far, I hear you saying. All right. And then the other piece that was raised, and Michelle, you said it, we have to provide notification. I know you're working on it, but there was a question about notification to the public, so we have to publish that, but also a notification to the operators that it might impact. And so it also go that extra step and make sure that the operators are aware.
I think it'd be appropriate to send a letter, so Greg, I'd like to work with your office to get a good list.
Sure, happy to help.
Okay, great. I think we do need to go that extra step. Okay, so more to come related to all of the above. Tony, were you suggesting that we need to do a different kind of meeting or a deeper dive into the work of the policy committee? I heard you say that's something that you guys had done a long time ago. I didn't know if you were suggesting that we pick that up, or if that was just a passing observation.
I think that's an option at this point. I haven't had a chance, I was trying to go back and through my files and see if I still had that in terms of how we structured it, what the goal. So I would say possibly, but let me see if I can find that.
Okay.
No, I don't know. Probably doesn't have those records any longer. That's been a long time.
We may, down in the basement.
Oh. Okay.
Tony, were you the only one here for this?
I
I'm getting the impression Michelle was not here.
think so, yeah. Susan was here, most
There we go,
definitely, so.
there we go. All right.
Tony, I have a question. So you were saying when you were presenting your vision, of the policy committee, the example you specifically mentioned was the rulemaking, which I guess that's a little bit controversial about whether that was appropriately part of the policy committee or not. But are there other examples recently?
That's a good question.
Because I'm trying to understand, in terms of the kind of agendas we've had, the kinds of discussions we've had, are there things that you think were not really appropriately the work of this committee?
I use the example, maybe not so recently, but the grant program where we used to,
Yeah, but that's been
$500
changed.
grant, so, we'd be sitting here reviewing that.
Right,
And I would agree with you on that
Yeah,
point.
so
Right.
I think we need to give them the discretion
Yes.
to do it. That's sort of an extreme, some gray areas on that, but I think I think solid waste district has an overall approach that has been laid out for subdivisions, we've talked about that going. But anything that just is a major, I think focusing on major changes or how we're gonna do things. I don't have any specific, just what you, I can look at previous agenda items that we had had in previous.
I would make the suggestion that if any member of the policy committee feels like there's a direction towards micromanagement, that we raise the issue at that moment in time in the discussion. It might be appropriate at that moment in time.
Okay, well, so we've got a lot of work that will be taking place on the March meeting. So if you would give that further thought, if you're gonna, forward, certainly, but we'll leave it at this moment. Okay. Are we all comfortable moving on?
Yep.
Comfortable moving on? Our student rep has been very silent so far, so, all right. I don't want you to feel like you, shouldn't be.
Been the most exciting for a student rep,
That's
for the
right.
policy committee, so.
He's
Welcome.
He's scratching his head. Right. What? Okay. All right, we'll move on. So the next item is the waste industry representative. So as we all know, Mr. Riddle resigned, and I want to take a moment to thank him for his service to the policy committee. But because of that, we don't have a formal way for the major operator in the county to present to the group related to what they're doing and the activity both at the Coleraine site or the Bond Road site. So I would, Michelle, we were talking about this a little bit too and what this might look like, but I don't have any, you guys have all been here longer than I have, so I'm certainly open to any conversation about how we might want to not formalize some kind of presentation from Rumpke moving forward. So I want to open that up to the floor to see if there's any thought around that.
Maybe I get a little background on how the waste industry ever intended Rumpke as a representative. Cases were doing it. Originally set up an ex officio member to have a representative from the waste industry who obviously provides a lot of services throughout the county as an ex officio member. So originally, I think the first representative was actually someone from Waste Management. And the policy committee at that time had sort of worked with telling the waste industry companies that operate within the district that you provide nominations to us. And then, I don't know if we had a specific years that would serve, but the idea, I think, at that time anyway, with the waste industry was that they would probably rotate representatives in and out, meaning with the Waste Management for a couple of years. Obviously, Rumpke was here for a number of years on it. So that was not meant, and I wanted, because I think there's a misperception that this was specifically set up. We may have difficulty finding a waste industry representative. One approach to that may be that if you're going to send out notifications on the rules, folks that operate within the county decide you want to continue to have this ex officio member, you may ask them go with a trade association that has a local Ohio chapter anyway, and they would have local members of that. National Waste and Recycling Association on that.
Comment, if I may, I would recommend another legal opinion on if we are allowed to have an ex officio member. I know as part of this process.
Probably a good question.
That was
Yeah.
Part of Mr. Riddle's, I'm guessing. I would start there.
I
have a larger question, and what is the purpose of an ex officio on the policy committee? First, the question, can it be done? Is it legal? And then the second would be the larger purpose. And I see the larger purpose being additional input into the policy committee. And if the additional input being from the waste industry side of the perspective that we may not hold, then that may be that may justify an additional perspective of an environmentalist position on as an ex officio as well, to add perspective as well too. So I see Tim's perspective as he presented it in the citizens' comments. Not for balance, that's not the point, but if the purpose of adding the waste industry's ex officio position is to add industry perspective, that might be also the purpose for adding an environmentalist to the committee in an ex officio position too. But first, I think we have to ask the question, is it legal to add an ex officio? And I assume an ex officio position is a non-voting member of the policy committee. That's what I would assume by that definition of ex officio. I think research needs to be done there.
I would say I've been coming to these meetings fairly consistently for the committee for the last two. And Mr. Riddle's position as an ex officio member, mostly by the committee for my outside observation, bounce revenue questions off of, and kind of look into the future for the number one operator, not only the number one operator, but quite frankly, so any grant programs or any future plans that this operator was, and saw that the recession happened, and we saw a significant decline in revenue. Only one person in this room really could tell us when that was going to turn around and we could resume programming. Perspectives on outside projects that we're bringing revenue.
It also might prove useful to check and see what other solid waste districts are doing in that perspective. Do they have ex officio input processes?
And if not, how do they get the information from the industry? You know,
Exactly.
I'm a big proponent of what I term interested party meetings, where you bring people together that have varied interests and varied opinions on things, and sit them all together at the same time so that we all come to a common understanding about what's in front of us. And so I think that industry perspective is very helpful. And so I think we're trying to figure out a way to bring that information to this committee. So Ron's going to be very busy with a lot of legal opinions. But so it sounds like we need a legal opinion on the nature of an ex officio member to this that is legal, and then pursue from there who we would like to have serve in that role. And if we find that it is not legal, then is there another way to gain that perspective, and then we can talk about it then. But I guess first things first. So we'll ask for the legal opinion. I don't want to steal your thunder, Michelle, but Nifong's sitting right there, so there's just a lot going on the legal opinion front. But let's get that first and then figure it out. Does that sound reasonable? Okay. All right. Very good. So if there's nothing else on that or any of the items under 5.
Just one last thought on the waste industry representative, and that is our goal is waste reduction and recycling in the district. So maybe add that thought of a recycling industry representative to, in this position of an ex officio, somebody that we could tap in the world of recycling. And that might be a Rumpke representative. It might be somebody else that's in the world of recycling. That could give us a perspective of the recycling markets and how the recycling world is today.
Right. Or anybody else that might be a good ex officio.
So
historically, we only had the one. Only one ex. It sounds like Greg's rivaling you right here on the time.
I know, it's creeping up there pretty quick.
I don't
We
know.
also have a student representative.
have a quick question. Is there a difference between an ex officio member and just someone like a contact that we can consistently come back to for that information?
So from my understanding, the ex officio member actually sits on this committee. So they have a place here. They are non-voting members, but they have a regular avenue for input as opposed to having them come do a presentation periodically or do the participate in the public comment. Very good, yeah, I love the question. Okay, so we'll look into that as well and move forward after we figure out whether or not we can have it. All right, item number 6. So, Michelle, I'm going to leave this to you, but we do know that Karen Lupin was unable to attend. She is feeling well, I think, and so she'll come to our next meeting. Yeah. So that's why Karen's not here. Lots of people have COVID right now, Greg. I don't know what's going on.
I do, so Matt Hiddle, who's our planner with the Highway TA, is raising his hand. I thought he might have some, answer.
Okay.
That was the question about ex officio member.
Okay, great.
That's good.
Matt?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know my perspective and my knowledge of majority of the policy committees across the state, that I do not know of any others that have ex officio members. And also, I was trying to look it up, that, with the policy committee having a citizen representative and a public representative, I can't remember which one, but one of them specifically says with no affiliation with the waste industry. The other one does not have that distinction. So I thought that might be worth, a little deeper dive into, obviously the waste industry could be one of those representatives and may be on some of the policy committees. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Michelle.
Yeah, so the first item is the Hamilton County diversion rate for 2020. So we just got that, the news verifying that, and it is 55.78%, which is fantastic. So we are diverting 55% of the waste generated in Hamilton County, either recycling or composting, which is great news. We are higher than all the other 4 largest, of the 4 largest counties in Ohio. We have the highest rates, so we're beating Cuyahoga, Franklin, and Montgomery County. So, way to go us. We did have, it was a slight decrease from the 56% of 2019. And most of that was exempt waste, but we actually saw an increase, and it was also industrial diversion. We saw a decrease in that. But we did see an increase in the tons collected through residential commercial for recycling. Which is,
Michelle, do you have trends beyond?
I do, yeah. I could show you a chart.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's all. I just wanted to let everyone know the good news with that, and that we're doing a good job. We could be diverting, 45% more.
Yeah.
So 55 down, 45 to go. Yeah.
So Michelle, I don't have that paragraph right in front of me now, but when you talked about, the diversion rate, it's very good, but it's a couple percentage points lower this year than last year. But then, when you went on to report all the different specifics of it, they were all better. And so my question was, how can that be if everything is up at the diversion rate? Is it just there's so much more coming into the system that it changes?
Yes, that's a great question. So part of it was the industrial numbers came in a little lower. You have to remember that these numbers are based purely on voluntary surveys that Susan, Mary, and I collect. And so we rely completely on the recycling and the composting industry to send us their numbers.
Okay.
So that can vary year to year as to what numbers we get. We have, recyclers like Rumpke who send us their numbers every year, but we have some like scrap metal recyclers who may not. So that side of the reporting, I believe the diversion is actually much higher, but it's just difficult for us to measure.
Okay. Yeah. And on the composting part of it, I wondered where those are coming from, because, many of the grants that have been given are for community composting. I don't know how anybody keeps track of that. And then through the programs of the district to get individuals composting. I mean, do we have any sense of how any of that is impacting the diversion rate? It has to have some
So
impact.
it's a great question. So we can claim tonnage from small-scale community composting, and we do.
Okay.
Whenever we are aware of those efforts, we reach out to those composters and get their numbers. They, they can estimate numbers, they can weigh, we can figure it out by volume, so we do get those numbers. We are not allowed to claim backyard composting by residents.
Okay.
So any efforts on that end really get captured in the reducing of the landfill numbers. That's where we're seeing that. But we, and Matt and I have had long discussions about this. We cannot claim, if we give somebody a compost bin, we know it's about 500 pounds a year that they're gonna divert, we cannot claim that tonnage towards our diversion rate.
Well, so I don't have to get my husband to weigh our
No.
every time he takes it out to the bin?
No,
I don't have to do
won't let
that.
us
Okay.
claim those numbers, yeah.
Okay.
So I need to move on to the plan.
I think Bob has a question.
Yeah, similar questions, but I do know, with praise on these numbers, overall Hamilton County decreased tons entering the landfill, 28%, a decrease. But then I referred back to our revenue chart, and that's 43% of what's going into the Hamilton County landfills is received by in-district residents and businesses, and 57% from out-of-district and out-of-state. And so as we do our part to reduce waste and recycle, it's been filled up by out-of-district and out-of-state. Now, by courts, by decisions by courts, we can't do anything on out-of-state. That's nothing we can do there. But on out-of-district, I'm curious what we can do on out-of-district. And I know Matt's here from Ohio EPA, but as we do our work on the district plan, is there something we can do to discourage out-of-district waste from coming into Hamilton County, and not to engage in a legal issue, not to discriminate against that waste in an illegal fashion? But can there be a tiered waste fee? And I don't know the answer to that question. Many years ago, there was a tiered fee structure that was legal in Ohio. I don't know if that's still legal.
Yes, so we do have a tiered structure.
Yeah.
Any waste generated within Hamilton County is $1. Outside of Hamilton County, but still within Ohio, is $2.
There you go.
And then it's $1 for out of state. So
Could-
yes, there is.
Could that be accelerated? Could for the purpose of discouraging waste from coming into Hamilton County? The purpose of our district is multifold to achieve higher recycling and waste diversion goals as we're achieving here, and to lengthen and preserve the landfill space that we have in this district. And that landfill space is being eaten up by out-of-district, out-of-state waste. And could we discourage that out-of-state, out-of-district waste by increasing the fee structure for that out-of-district waste? And that's a policy decision that could be reviewed as we discuss our plan revision. Now, how other districts are doing it, I don't know. We should be reviewing how other districts are dealing with that issue, and how much we raise our fees. We do not have the justification of raising our fees for the need for revenue. We don't have that justification. I think the only justification is to reserve our landfill space. And I think we should toss that to our consultant and see what she says.
So I don't remember at one time the ratio of in-district, district fees.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, look into that, I can't recall it. So if you wanted to raise it to $6, I don't think you have I don't know, $6, say, for out-of-district. That means that the in-district, I think out-of-state waste, you cannot charge any more than what you're.
You can't, I know by court rulings, you can't affect the out-of-state, you can't charge out-of-state differently than in districts. Yeah.
In the overall scheme of things, the out-of-state waste is really not that.
Yeah.
Basis.
No.
Just a little different perspective on this. This goes back many years. First passed House Bill 592, which established solid waste districts in Ohio. One of the original concepts at that time was to not every county to have a solid waste district.
That's right.
They talked about having, I think, like 5 or 6 regional districts.
The goal was 12 to 16.
Because they realized that the waste is managed on a very regional basis. It goes beyond.
That hit a little bit. Matt?
Yes, just to answer the question of what people were saying as far as to disposal. The Interstate Commerce Clause challenged the ability to charge more for out-of-state waste, and therefore the first and third tier need to be the same. And I believe they're within the district can go up to as high as $4. Does that make sense?
The other thing that's lacking in these numbers, and it's probably not significant, is how much waste that is generated in the county goes outside of the county.
I do have this number.
Coming back to my original comment, I think we're doing great inside the district. It's just a shame to fill up our district's facilities with out-of-district waste streams. It's just a conundrum there.
So about that out-of-district waste, a question. I know one time when this was raised, when Larry was here, he mentioned that after there had been a tornado in Montgomery County, that all of that was coming in, and that was kind of like a one-time
fill.
big thing.
Yep.
So I guess my question, though, is, on a regular basis, are there some cities, counties, whatever, who are just regularly using us because they don't have their own landfill and they haven't really thought through, how to reduce? Are we just providing an outlet for them that they don't have to deal with the problem in a serious way, which is a good reason to raise the fees, to make them think harder about it, I guess.
And Warren County being one of those counties.
Okay, and they would be just regularly
Yeah.
depending on us, okay.
Yeah. And there are numerous other counties, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So also don't forget that things like Rumpke's recycling material recovery facility in St. Bernard is a regional. Recyclables come into that from outside counties, so not a fee on that.
That's separate from the landfill, though. That's a separate issue.
There's not.
I'll move on to the plan update. So, as Commissioner Driel said, Karen Lucan, who's our consultant for the solid waste plan, she was supposed to present today about the analyses that she's working on and our public input sessions. Unfortunately, still and not able to present. She will present at the March meeting. However, I do have a presentation for you on the economic incentive analysis, which I shared a couple weeks ago. And then we'll talk a little bit about our stakeholder sessions as well, just to address some of the public input. So, our economic incentive analysis, this is mainly, just to step back for a second, Highway Pay has a format. They have a list of analyses that you have to do. Economic incentive analysis is one of them. So, they're mainly looking at what programs we have to incentivize waste diversion with funding, basically. So you could technically say grants for, but we're going to include grants someplace else, and we really just focus on the residential recycling incentive, which is our real economic incentive. After that, there's a section where they ask you to look at the pay-as-you-throw programs that communities have, which I've done as well. So this primarily focuses on the economic incentive analysis, or the residential recycling incentive. It is, although I am talking about this today, like I've said before, you are welcome to send me input anytime over the next few months about this, any thoughts, ideas, changes that you have. The primary audience for this is Ohio EPA. So this will be included in the big plan for everybody, but we don't anticipate most members of the public reading every single analysis. There'll be chapters that summarize a lot of this. So this is really a deeper dive than most people will take. So the residential recycling incentive right now has a budget of $900,000. So we at the last plan set the budget based on our revenue. So if we had a 2.5 revenue, it was going to be $800,000. If it went down to 2.4, we were going to reduce it to $700,000. If it went up to 2.6, we were going to increase it to $900,000. So we've been at that higher revenue for the life of the current plan that we're under. So since 2008, it has been a $900,000 budget. And basically that is a pie of money that we split amongst the communities based on their diversion rate. So you fall into a tier based on how much you are diverting. So that includes your composting. And then that's how many dollars per ton for the recycling you get. So they don't get dollars per ton for the composting. They into a tier for the composting, and then it's dollars per ton for recycling. And this was something that came out of the community stakeholder meetings for a few different reasons, but primarily to make it more fair so that a really large community that collects lots and lots of trees doesn't take the whole pot of money, basically. So right now we have these 7 tiers of funding, and the approximate dollars per ton changes because it is a pot of money, so we have to base it on how much everybody has diverted. So I wanted to take a step back just for a second to consider, because I think it's important, this is our largest budget item by far, right? $900,000. It far surpasses the yard trimmings program, the house and hazardous waste, which are other big hitters. So it is definitely our largest program. It is, however, if you look at the waste that is going to the landfill, the largest piece of that pie is commercial sector. So that's about 60% of our current waste landfill is the commercial sector. So about 25%, 26% is the residential sector. So I just want you to consider that as we're talking about this program, because the bulk of our programs are actually focused on residents. And so we do a lot with businesses, but I think that we should do more, basically. So I just want to continuously keep that in your minds as you're thinking about this. So,
Michelle, real quick question. Do you know, you shared with us the breakdown of diversion for the county. What percentage of that is associated with?
So you mean as far as like the tons diverted? I do. I don't have that off the top of my head, but it's similar in the breakdown when you look at the industry has a higher diversion rate. So if you were to like look at this similar pie for diversion, they're diverting like 70, their percent, whereas the residential is the lowest of the three, and then the commercial is somewhere in between. Oh, Mary has the numbers. So residential is 18% diversion rate overall, if that makes sense. So they're diverting about 55,000 tons a year. Commercial is 39% diversion rate, that's 434,000 tons a year. And then industrial is 863,000 tons.
Thank you.
So when you're looking at how the communities are spending the RRI funds, we require them to let us know what they're doing with the funds. The largest piece is to help offset the cost of curbside recycling. For no community does this cover the cost of curbside recycling. That's usually not even half the cost. So this is just, to help offset that cost. We also see a good percentage going to the recycling drop-off, labor. So we do have a few communities like St. Bernard, Indian Hill, who collect their own recyclables, or even yard trimmings. So it's helping to fund those positions. And then a few other things, recycled content purchases. So this could be, like Norwood purchased, recycled plastic park benches that say Norwood Recycles on them. So they can do that. So what we have found though, and this is one of the gaps that we pulled out in the analysis, is that we have this incentive program that by design is supposed to encourage communities to, our diversion rate is only 3%. If we just got to that 5%, we'd be getting this much more dollars per ton. So that was the intent, but it is not in practice happening for most communities that are at the very bottom of the performance. So those communities that are at the top of the list, so if you see, there's 47 communities, so if you see these high numbers, that means they have the lowest diversion rates in Hamilton County. This incentive structure is not encouraging them to make any changes in their program that would increase. And you can see, we very plainly listed up here, Addison receives $34 in that's just not enough money to do anything but maybe buy a pack of recycled content paper. And really, they cannot make any changes to their program that is going to increase their diversion rate with these funds. So one of the ideas that we have to make a change in the next plan is to have a minimum threshold for this grant program. So you have, if you apply for this grant program, you are going to get a minimum of notes or whatever it is that we figure out is going to work, so that they can get a recycling drop-off, or they can have a yard trimmings collection, something to help them improve their infrastructure that's actually going to make an impact. So we would consider where that threshold needs to be. We haven't ran all those numbers yet, but that is one of the ideas to help improve.
Take population in Addison is
very small, yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wonder if population impacts some of these.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it would as far as diversion rate too. I mean, their diversion rate is not. So that's a good point. So Addison, $2,000 is going to mean a lot more to Addison than it would to the city of Cincinnati. That's just a drop in the bucket, right? So yes, and notice a lot of these communities are smaller. However, like Whitewater Township is actually pretty large. So when you look at land, so Cheviot is. So yes, that does consider, and so maybe that is a factor we need to take into place as far as what your minimum thresholds would be that would make an impact. So the other, and sorry for the stop picture, but the other idea that we had, and this came out of the community stakeholder meetings that we've had so far, we've had a dozen or so, is creating a best practices list. So, telling the communities, these are the ways that you could spend your fund that you're going to get the most return on investment. You're going to get the most diversion. And just creating that document. So it's easy for them. They get the funds and they have some ideas, some good concrete ideas on what to do with them. And then also facilitate regional collaboration. Perhaps communities that are neighbors, if we get them in a room or a virtual room and have a discussion, perhaps Gulf Manor and Amberley could work together to pool their funds and create more diversion. So these were some of the ideas that came out of, and that wouldn't really impact our operation of the RRI like the first idea would. It's just an idea to help increase that impact and try to get those funds being used for something that actually will increase the county's diversion.
Yeah. So Michelle, you used the term community stakeholder. I thought I heard Tim Mara say that the stakeholder interviews that had gone on so far didn't really include community stakeholders. Is this a different
I'm
process?
using the community as the 48 municipalities. And
Oh, okay, so.
yes, those are the ones we've had so far.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
So the other part of this analysis is to analyze our pay-as-you-throw programs. We actually have one true pay-as-you-throw program in Hamilton County that is Madeira. Marymount actually dropped their patient zero program last year, so we only have one. But then Forest Park has a almost pay-as-you-throw model where they have an eco-tier program. So about 8% of their population are using that program where they pay less, but because they have a 95-gallon waste cart, or it's not a 95 gallons, there's some reason that it's not considered a strict pay-as-you-throw, but it's a pay-as-you-throw close. So we analyze that program as well. So one of the ideas here, we always offer technical assistance to communities who are going out to bid and, and consider, can you add pay-as-you-throw? We had several pay-as-you-throw workshops, and helping with that. And the idea just has not, caught fire at all. We even had, Tom from Madeira do a video for us and put that out there and as much as he will advocate for it, no other communities have taken this step yet. So I do have some questions to spur conversation, but certainly I'm up for other questions. And then after that, I have a kind of timeline, and we'll talk about the stakeholders. So first question would be, do you think that we should add the minimum threshold for the communities? What do you think of that idea? And then the other, taking a step back, should we be spending this much on the RRI? Should we divert some of those funds to other programs? Or should we, is that appropriate? Do you think fostering these regional meetings would be a good use of staff time and resources? And then if you have any other ideas of how we could promote volume-based programs, I'm all ears. But we seem to have beating the communities over the head with it. It just doesn't seem to happen. So those are my points.
So I'll start out. I do like the minimum threshold idea. I do think that, as you admit, that the current spending pattern isn't moving the needle. So I think a change in pattern would help, and I like the minimum threshold idea. I try it for a couple of years and then try a new idea after a couple of years. I think changing the pattern of expenditure every 2 or 3 years might help there. Should you continue spending the money on the residential programs? I changed that question a little bit. I change the revenue package a little bit. I'd explore the second tier revenue idea, and the new revenues be spent on the commercial industrial sector, and keep this budget for the residential. So if you can bring in the new revenue stream, put it all on the industrial commercial, and create a similar incentive program for the commercial industrial stream. That would be my thought there. And then I really like establishing the regional meetings and expanding the collaboration meetings to all stakeholders. So that takes a lot of labor. Your choice on the use of your labor expense there, but I think taking in stakeholder input from the community representatives as well as the community, I think is always helpful. And then the third, on the volume-based waste programs, I've been very involved in my career on volume-based community programs throughout many states, and it is a hard conversion, but every community I've worked with has never regretted the conversion. It's just getting through the conversion. And I do know the US EPA is planning a grants program in the next year, using infrastructure dollars. When those dollars are released, I'll let you know. But it's probably about a year away. And I think using grant funding to promote volume-based waste programs would help. But I do know that there are consultants out there that can help. I'm not volunteering myself. I'm trying to retire. But your consultant that you're working with for the plan, might help, as well as other consultants.
Well, somewhere in the last sequence of meetings, and maybe it had to do with Officer Peak's reports on all they tell me, but there was a suggestion that the county would provide a model contract for waste disposal.
Yeah.
And factored into it would be curbside recycling
Yes.
as just a
Yeah.
common package deal. And I don't know what kind of financial incentives would have to be part of that, but it seems like that would be money really well spent. And if you're trying to increase the diversion rate, I mean, if you could get more communities to buy into curbside recycling that people didn't have to subscribe to themselves,
That's right.
I think that could be a real game-changing kind of thing. And as I said, I don't know what kind of dollars would have to be used to do that, but it seems like it would solve two problems, maybe less dumping for poor Officer Peak, because everybody would have to have at least a trash pickup contract that would then have recycling connected with it. So I don't know, Michelle, is there any research or any information about what would be involved in doing such a thing?
So we certainly help communities who are going out to bid with their
Right.
request for proposals and with, and help them integrate recycling in that. So that we've done that with Sharonville and Silverton and Lincoln, helping them to get that to add that language in. We have saved, all of the different requests for proposals and kind of best practices, and we actually contracted with Michelle Nesker to do a contracting workshop for communities to have all her information too. So we do have resources for communities who are going out for bid.
But part of this idea was, this would be mandatory. I mean, every resident in the county would have to have a contract for trash and recycling pickup. It wouldn't be any longer a hit and miss basis.
That would be setting out a countywide policy, which we
Right.
don't have at the moment.
Right, and I don't know what would be involved in doing that, or if the commissioners have any interest in even exploring something like that, but it just seems ridiculous that there are people that don't have I mean, they can just take their garbage and dump it someplace else, whether it's in a commercial dumpster or valley. And if you're gonna do something like that, having the recycling part of it would just seem to be, it just seemed to be a good idea. I don't know, I just wish somebody could think a little bit more about what would be involved in that kind of county-wide regulation.
Yeah, just a little perspective about the RRI program. So that was originally created in 90 or so, I believe. And at that time, 30 years, the original thought process behind the RRI program was meant to be seed money. It was not intended to provide communities with 30 years of operational money. That's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing we heard at that time out of the 48 communities on it is that they wanted to run their own programs. They did not want to perceive to be a county telling them what to do with their trash collection, what to do with their. So that's why you don't have mandatory programs. The third thing about that is that it is an immense amount of money. Return is not all that great, but why is it that the commercial and industrial sectors seem to be doing so much better? It's all driven by economics. It's driven by the economics. They look at it, they have a completely different waste stream to begin with. Huge. That they have more valuable materials in their waste stream. Classic of, I can get more money if I separate this out. This is my trash collection. Actually get some revenue off of doing this. So that's the best model that works. That model doesn't work very well with residential waste, because it's you've got so many different materials, you're trying to get them out of there to begin with, or keep them from going in. That's why the industry has moved more and more to more automated material recovery facilities, creating more recyclables, better quality recyclables out of it. I guess what I'm saying is maybe it is time for us to sit back and say, what do we really want to do with the RRI program? Talk about making these changes, which are going to have some positive impacts, but are we fighting an uphill battle that's not going to change? And I think making mandatory waste collection or mandatory recycling, you're going to have a very hard time convincing the local to approve the plan that says we're going to require you to do this. And the broader view back is that what are we doing is we're thinking, where do we get our revenue? Well, we're getting our revenue from dollars that are from a fee on the landfill. Well, where do those dollars come from? Well, those dollars come from commercial, residential, and the industrial users of those landfills. And so we're taking the dollars, and then we're taking it, and then we're reshuffling and sending it back out. That's a concept we need to maybe rethink a little bit about. And I think we've seen it's sort of working with the commercial industrial, but on the residential side, it's not. There isn't that same economic incentive, or otherwise we'd have very robust curbside recycling programs in every community. And I think that's just a bigger question we need to sit back and ask ourselves.
So going back to like trying to encourage certain communities to increase their reversion rate so that they earn more funds, has there any thought been given to maybe changing or tweaking the approximate dollars per ton to provide more financial support to those communities lower on the scale, while also like encouraging those higher to still keep doing what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we can change the values. Right now, it's just $4 for every tier, so certainly we could change the values and see what would happen.
I'm not sure if I know, the entire, financial situation, but that seems like a interesting idea that I thought was,
That would work for some cities. I don't know, for areas that leave it up to their individual residents to pay for trash collection and to pay for recycling as well. Dollars that they made it chosen. I'll say, a local government that leave it up to the residents. You pay for your own recycling, you pay for your own trash collection. That they're allowed to claim those RRI dollars back. And they have to use it for, quote, recycling things, but it's all free money for them. Sort of an incentive for them to try to increase it, but they are going to have a hard time acquiring recycling trash collection. And then the question on that is, who's going to enforce those? If the district decides, communities decide that, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to require trash collection, we are going to require recycling, whether it's curbs. Not as easy as it sounds.
I live in a township where it's up to the residents to contract for recycling and trash, either combination, any combination. And on my street, there are 3 residents that choose not to contract for trash or recycling. And they walk their trash to their neighbors or across the street, anywhere down the street, without conversation with their neighbors. It's trash theft, basically. And it's creating a conversation up and down the street among the neighbors. It's creating a bit of consternation among the neighbors. And I've talked to the public works director of the township, and he is aware of at least 200 situations in the township. It's Green Township. And, I mentioned to him, would he be in favor of some type of mandatory ordinance from the county? And he says, absolutely yes. He would be very supportive of something that came down from above. But and I said, would that come from the township? And he said, no, these township trustees would not pass anything like that.
I think there's already a solution to that, in most of the contracts I've seen with individuals, that's a contract violation. If you're paying for your trash collection and you allow one of your neighbors to put trash out, that's a contract.
Try getting the neighbors to talk to each other and say.
Obviously, well, and a trash collection companies are, obviously, they're looking at that saying, wait a minute,
It will come down to trash wars among neighbors unless you get the township involved. And it's very difficult. It's becoming a very strong conversation among neighbors with some angry words and some trash bags being pulled out of the trash can and dumped on people's porches.
Oh, my.
So what's not happening is universal recycling up and down the street because they're so worried about the trash collection and just three neighbors walking their trash to other neighbors. And from what I understand, it's happening all across the township. And I believe this is happening in other areas of the county as well too. And I think what we need is some type of universal activity across the county, some universal program. But you can't babysit every neighborhood. How do you enforce it? How do you do it? I've talked to Rumpke, and Rumpke's aware of the situation. They're aware of what's going on, but they can't babysit the neighborhoods. They can't, they can't pull trash out of a dumpster, out of a can and say this isn't belonging to this address. So the situation's gonna accelerate until the police are called in, or until there's universal requirements for trash at every address, trash collection at every address.
Is there an analysis about, of the 49 jurisdictions in Hamilton County, which ones have requirements related to this?
We did
trash and recycling?
Yes, we did the residential, recycling infrastructure analysis. And I think I sent that out maybe in November, but we do have that where we looked at what communities contract on behalf of their residents, what communities self-haul, what communities, don't have any hire their residents to.
I get that, please. I mean, if you talk about countywide policy, I mean, this conversation sounds very familiar where, the local jurisdiction is not keen on enforcing or putting anything in place themselves, yet they want someone else to do it for their state. It reminds me of even the state of Ohio, right?
Yep.
All that, it is, it's the COVID conversation. Well, why isn't the governor doing anything? Like, well, he's not, so are you going to, it's one of these things. So I'd be curious to know that as a policymaker to see how many jurisdictions we're really talking about here. How many residents we're talking about. But because from my perspective, when we look at some of these questions, I'm curious to know where we get the biggest bang for the buck. I mean, I understand the idea of minimum thresholds, but I think of that a little differently in thinking that if there's a community that's very, very small and you give them a good-sized chunk of money, the bang for the buck probably isn't as great as, putting that money somewhere else where the population's higher. So that's why, I think we have to be some of the investments that are being made if we're really serious about diverting trash from the landfill. So that would be my one comment. And then this other idea, I would have to see an analysis to show how the county, if the county would play any.
One quick question, if I may. I'm just curious, your perspective or your team's perspective, as a policy committee are trying to get to zero waste, where the big thing for our buck could be from?
The commercial sector, investing more, and promoting out to the commercial sector, offering them resources, cardboard and large, high-value materials.
You guys have kind of a general, I mean, it seems like there's some benefits coming from the residential program, do you have a bottom dollar that could still provide some benefit, but maybe buy less park benches? You know, like, we will have an impact.
We'd have to work out that number. We've not looked at what would happen if we decrease. We have, in the stakeholder meetings, we've talked to what would happen if we just got rid of the RRI, what would happen if we decrease it, but that's only been qualitative, we've not actually.
My personal recommendation would be to reduce somewhat to a level that you thought they would continue doing what they're doing, and then invest and try and reduce waste in the county, commercial.
Yeah, commercial.
I like your comment about the money they do get focusing in for specific yield results, and, well, benches made of recycled material are great. Probably something they would have bought anyway, and there's nothing to improve the rate of recycling.
I like what you're saying, Greg, but the unintended consequence, is the city of Cincinnati. They have an archaic funding situation where they pay for trash and recycling collection out of property tax. And they don't have a decent funding situation. And if you take away funding from the county, you decrease funding for their curbside recycling. There isn't an alternative pathway to recover that funding elsewhere in their city budget. Their recycling budget competes with putting police officers on the street. And that's a losing formula.
Well, didn't they just get an infusion of $1 million a year from the, this is what I heard, this is what they told me. They now get the $1 million a year that's generated by the commercial franchise fees.
I'm unfamiliar with that situation, but I do know that they are not funding new trucks on the road because of their lack of funds. I do know that.
Well, that's their trash collection.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you've got a lot of feedback, Michelle.
Really quickly, I thought it would be helpful to take a step back and look, this is a very basic timeline of where we're at. So we have hired our consultants, we have started the process, we've almost completed all the diversity, equity, and inclusion work. We will have our diversity, equity, inclusion consultant, Red Khan, will be here presenting at the May meeting. So right now, we are working on finishing up the analyses. We have had to push the timeline back a little bit on the analyses and the stakeholders because of all of the work we were doing for the solid waste rules and the subcommittee and all of that. So we didn't start the stakeholder inputs really until December. So we are working on the stakeholder inputs right now. We've had several one-on-one community meetings. We've had a virtual and an in-person where we brought the communities, and I'm talking about the political jurisdictions. We have planned a virtual reuse industries Zoom meeting. We've met with restaurants and food truck associations and talked, which was interesting, stakeholder. We've also worked with our diversity, equity, inclusion consultants, and Karen worked together to put together a virtual small business, minority-owned business, stakeholder business group. And so it was kind of a focus group where they gave us feedback on our programs. We have more, we have a survey plan to go out broader to all businesses to get feedback. And also some one-on-one work in that area. We also are planning for the just general public, to get general public feedback, a stakeholder session, a virtual stakeholder session that would be basically like a Zoom meeting with talking about our programs and getting feedback on them. And then we plan on doing a general survey, which we find is the best way to get feedback from the public, is to let them reply to us when they have time. And so we'll be doing a Survey Monkey survey for the general public as well. So all that will be happening in the first quarter. We have other sections of the plan, the chapters, the projections, and all that will be happening in the second quarter. Like I mentioned before, in the first quarter, Karen will be presenting to the policy committee at the next meeting. And then the third quarter is when all of that action wraps up. We'll be sending the policy committee. I'll be sending them to you as we finish the sections, but then we'll send the draft. This is the draft report. You'll have about a month to review it before we submit the draft to Ohio EPA August 7th. And Ohio EPA has 45 days to review it. So depending on how long they take to review, they'll give us feedback. And then that's when it gets a little bit fuzzy. We have many months that we could take to take their comments, incorporating them, and I don't anticipate that we'll have some comments. We always have comments. We don't anticipate it'll take us that long. But so once we get their comments and suggestions put in, everybody is okay with it, that will start the ratification process. So that will probably be the last quarter of the year, and so this process will go into 2020. Once we start the ratification process, that's when the real formal public input sessions, and we have to get the Board of County Commissioners approval and the at least 60% of the population, communities representing 60% of the population of Hamilton County approving plan, including the largest municipality, which would be the city of Cincinnati. Our last plan, we had 100% approving. So that will be into 2023. Yes, County Commissioners approval and the city of Cincinnati, and then.
Yeah, Michelle, when you talk about the efforts to get public input, does that really respond to the question Tim Mara had raised and Marie from the League of Women Voters raised, that there will be an opportunity?
There will be.
Before there's a draft? I mean, it's going to be in the making?
Yeah, in the next month or two, there will be.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Great point.
That's nothing new, you've done that at every.
That's all I had about plans. I was about sharing.
All right, moving on, Michelle.
Yeah, so you do have a attachment D. It's just an overview of the one application we received since the last meeting. It was with Last Mile Food Rescue, who we have given grants to before. The application, the proposal wasn't quite ready for funding, so Cher has given feedback, and hopefully they will take that feedback and work with it. So there's no new grants to report. Do you want me to go over quickly the draft work plan? So this is really, this is attachment E. It really is a draft. We don't even have all of the 2021 numbers benchmarked firm yet, but I tried to put together as much as we could. A few things that we're excited about: the public recycling program. We're seeing more and more events happening again, for better or for worse. I don't know. It's great over there. But they are happening. They are borrowing our recycling and composting containers. So we have increased that goal for 2022. We anticipate COVID will be out the door, and we will bring back events. We also anticipate many more Let's Stop Waste. So our technical assistance to the businesses, we expect that to be beefed up considerably in 2022 as well. And then we, just like with the container, we expect that we'll see a lot more requests for us to be at public events, tabling at public events. And we expect to see our outreach numbers for our residential recycling and our wasted food campaigns. So those are just some highlights.
And item E.
Yeah, so the last one is our environmental enforcement, just very similar to what you've seen in the past. This has the full year through December of what Deputy Peak has been up to. I expect that he took some time off in December, or there just wasn't much happening, but that number went down, but I don't think that is probably vacation time. So I believe he is on, if that Brian is.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
Anyone have any questions for him?
Brian, anything to add to the report?
So over the last 2 or 3 years, it appears, if you've, it's not on that graph, but a graph that Brad had put out, or maybe it's attached, I'm not sure. Yeah, the cases have increased. I can tell you that probably over the last 4 or 5 months at the end of the year there, I was out with water quality, when water quality goes out and gives their updates and their research to the communities. And you know, a lot of the municipalities, I'd say, weren't really aware of the role that I play or my job. kind of opened up some doors. I've already had 2 inquiries about tire collections in communities and how to get rid of them through the, the EPA grant. So the numbers are going up. Potentially maybe because of the word getting out. Well, we've been trying to do that so that everybody knows that, the resource that I am, and, if I can help you, obviously I will, but I'd say probably still about 80% of my work is in the city of Cincinnati.
Questions for Brian? All right, the next, Michelle, are you finished?
Yes.
All right, the next item is the tentative future agenda items. Karen?
Yeah, I have a question, about agenda item. So earlier in the fall, or maybe the end of the summer, I don't remember when, Michelle, when we were reviewing budget, how things had gone, the previous budget year, and there was an overage. And my understanding was at some point, we would talk about what to do with the overage, unless it had all been spent by this time. And I was just wondering if that is gonna come up as an agenda item.
Yes, that will be part of our financial analysis.
Okay.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, and, Michelle, I think it's already on your calendar for next meeting, but, methane, my thoughts for the policy committee is to talk about the carbon, footprint of methane from our landfills. SWACO, is a solid waste district in Ohio, and they have a carbon, emissions, management plan as a solid waste district, and I thought that might be something for us to consider as a policy committee too, because of, climate change and the climate impacts of methane. And I thought it might be worth our discussion as we're doing a plan update.
So I hear you said that's on the agenda.
Yes, I spoke to Bob, requested that methane be on the agenda, and so we're gonna talk about that in March.
Okay. Yeah. All right, policy committee members' comments. Anybody have any comments? Pierce, got anything?
Not this time.
All right, very good. So upcoming policy committee meetings, our next meeting is Wednesday, March 16th, 2022, 1:30 here, assuming we can be in person. Although, do these meetings have to be in person?
Yeah.
They do, all right, so we will be here in person unless otherwise advised. And we'll still have the virtual option available, of course. Is there anything else to come before the body? If not, I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Very good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Denise.